Hello, everyone. My name is Mark Kageyama, and I'd like to welcome everyone here to To Be Your Own Hero. I'm a stage 4 prostate, bone, and lung cancer patient, and I've been battling cancer for a little over 2 years. Things are going very well, and I'm very, very blessed and very happy with my progress. In fact, I just recently had a meeting with my oncologist, and we're going to be doing some fresh scans here later this month. So I'll be able to share the results of those. But as of right now, things are looking really, really good. So everybody's pleased about that, and I'm so excited for 2023 and the great things that I feel that are coming in this year. And so let's all band together and help make this a fantastic 2023. And I'm so happy at this time to have a really special guest today that I'm going to be interviewing, Terrilynn Renella. Please introduce yourself and share us a little bit about who you are.
All right. Hey, thanks, Mark. Gosh, such great news. Like, I live for these moments when somebody says I was stage 4 and now here I am changing the world. So congratulations. I love that.
Thank
My
you.
Lynn Renella. I go by Terry, but I like the name Terrilynn. It was given to me at birth. I am a 3-time cancer thriver. So if you're ever looking for me, just Google 3-time cancer thriver, and that you will you will find me. I call myself a thriver because after cancer almost took my life the 3rd time, I became a thriver when I became cancer free. So I talk about how I've been thriving. I've been cancer free for 6 years. So I'm sure we'll get into my story a little bit, but I was diagnosed in 2013 with a very aggressive, unusual cancer, and it came back 3 times and almost took my life.
What type of cancer?
So it was squamous cell carcinoma of the parotid gland. So your gland, for me, the gland right here, it's salivary gland. I'd had none of the, the like people that smoke, people that chew tobacco. There's some famous people that have lost their lives to this cancer. And one of the things I know somebody else I remember you interviewed said, when you're diagnosed with cancer, do not start Googling it because you'll just find nothing but bad stuff. Anyway, but it was aggressive and it was unique and fairly unusual. It's not, head and neck cancers are really on the rise right now, but it was right here. So
I am so excited to hear your story. I'm not sure what to call you, Terry or Terrilynn. I've been so used to Terrilynn.
That's good.
I like that. That's a beautiful name. Beautiful
Thank you.
name.
I'll tell you a really funny story. So my parents had 3 boys. My mother got pregnant with me 14 months. Well, I was born 14 months after my brother, my brother Mitch. And when I was born, men were not allowed in the delivery room, and they came out and said, "You have a girl." And he didn't believe them because he thought he was going to have another boy. So he was going to name the boy Terry. And if by chance it was a girl, he was going to name the girl Terrilynn. And that's how I got the name. It's all one word. So anyway, quick story. All right.
Awesome. That's a great story. I like
Yeah.
that. Yeah, absolutely. So let's begin the journey here. And so how did you so you got cancer. So
So,
what started going through your mind at that time? What was your mindset?
well, at the time I was a single mom. Had been living for close to 30 years as a sales professional and then got into sales management. I traveled the world doing my job. I always traveled. I lived under a great deal of stress, and I had 4 children. And as I said, I was a
Wow.
single mom. So when they diagnosed the cancer, it started as a very small 1-inch underneath my skin tumor. that I did nothing about for a year. I just kind of watched it, nothing happened. And then my daughter saw it one day and she said, Mom, go get that checked out. And I did. And it was a ear, nose, and throat doctor. And he's like, oh, I'm certain it's benign. You don't have anything to worry about, but let's do a fine needle biopsy. So they did a fine needle biopsy, which was very painful. My youngest son was in the room with me because it was pretty scientific as far as he was concerned. He was like, I think 10 at the time. And the ear, nose, and throat doctor said, hey, everything's fine. Don't worry about it. But he did it again and he looked concerned. And I said, you look concerned. Are you sure everything's okay? And he said, no, everything's fine. I did not read the biopsy report. So lesson number one, be an advocate, always read your reports. I did not. So 2 months later, it doubled in size and became painful. So I went back to him and I said, look, this is painful. I need you to take it out. He said, okay, schedule me for surgery. It was a 7-hour surgery. I came out, went home. 2 days later, he called me and said, you have cancer. And I was shocked because he'd assured me that it wasn't. So he said, I want you to take some time, but you need to get into radiation. Like, okay. And so I took some time. Well, 2 months later, it was back again. So now I knew I was dealing with a very aggressive cancer. I went to a radiation oncologist who said, because this ear, nose, and throat doctor didn't tell me how aggressive it was. And he said, I don't know why he didn't tell you, because it's extremely aggressive. So I came back a second time. I went all over the country. I went to MD Anderson for a week. I'm like, I realize I've got something aggressive and something that's not the norm. And I Googled it like I should not have. People, some famous people lost their lives to this cancer because it's aggressive. It comes from here into the lungs and down. So I ended up here at UC Health. I had a second surgery. That surgeon was a plastic surgeon. He was the head of UC Health, head, neck, and the ear, nose, and throat. But he was also a plastic surgeon. So he went in the morning. He came in to take to do the surgery. My daughter was with me. My youngest daughter, became my caregiver. And we said, how long will the surgery be? And he said, 8 to 9 hours. And we're like, what? And he's like, I'm not just going to go in there and like rip it out. I mean, you have facial nerves and I'm going to try to save them. But he said, you have to sign a form that if I have to take your nerves, I can, and you will come out looking like you had a stroke and you will not be able to blink your left eye. Now, going into surgery, I was so frightened, but he did save my facial nerves. Then, I was living a pretty stress-free life. I'd taken a job that wasn't stressful. Then I took a very, very stressful job running
let's pause just a second.
Yes.
So I want to get into your mindset at that particular time.
Okay.
When you got the cancer diagnosis, what were your thoughts? What was going through your mind? I mean, were you, I know everybody's scared, let's talk about that.
Okay. Thank you. I try to gloss. Sorry. I'm glad you're bringing me back. I was absolutely scared out of my mind, Mark, because I just lost my brother 3 years prior to my diagnosis to cancer. Absolutely scared out of my mind. So there was tons of fear. And I really pretty much lived my life in fear, which most of us do. We're a fear-based society, and a lot of fear is put into us. And I don't know about you, but I'm sure when you were diagnosed, you had that because you've witnessed people losing their life to cancer. So when you hear that word, it's absolute fear. And yes, I feared for my own life, but what scared me the most is I had 4 children and the youngest was 10. Like, I was like, God, I'm not ready. And I made a wristband that became not now, not this way. That was my motto through my cancer journey. So scared out of my mind. Yes.
I love that wristband. That's a great reminder. I think one of the things that we need to constantly remind ourselves, especially at that particular time, is, we need to look. It's so important to move and look ahead and, realize that there is hope, you know,
Yes.
and there's good things down the road. And if you can't believe that, and if you can't see that, then, you're going to be stuck where you are. So that I think that's really awesome. So I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, that I mean, and I love that, and I appreciate you stopping me because that's really important for people to understand that there is a lot of fear. But what I tell people who are diagnosed with cancer is we need to get out of fear. And one of my mottos too now is I give hope to what feels like at the time a hopeless situation. And it does feel hopeless in the beginning, but we have to give hope to the situation. And that's why I'm out speaking and I'm writing. I have a book coming out, because we do need to have hope. And what drove me, because I became depressed, especially the third time the cancer came back. I became depressed. I actually got suicidal. And what drove me was love. And it was I get it was the love of my children. They kept me moving forward when I didn't want to. When I just said, just take me, because I can't do this anymore. Then so yes, thank you for, we've got to give hope to a situation that is not hopeless.
Absolutely. I mean, that goes back to the way we're taught as a society.
Yes.
When you say, "Oh, I have cancer," it's like, "Oh, I'm so sorry," and immediately the thought in that person is, "Wow, uh, this person's going to die, or this person's not going to be around, or this person is going to be impaired." And we need to change that. And I
Yep.
know you're doing your best to change that, and I am as well. So yeah, that's so important, that people realize that there is hope, and to believe in that hope.
Cancer is not a death sentence unless we make it one. And it is so much about emotions, and it's so much about how we view it. But there's so many emotions wrapped around what you were feeling before cancer. I obviously was stressed. Stress brings on chronic diseases, including cancer. I obviously was going through horrific grief. My mother passed 5 weeks before my brother passed. And when my brother passed, that was the end of that was it for the people who came into this life with, because I'd already lost two older brothers and I'd already lost my dad. So the grief
Wow.
was overpowering for me. So when it came back a third time, I obviously wasn't dealing with the grief and the stress. My emotions were of fear, and I wasn't letting anyone in with the exception of my children. So I kept denying cancer. So the third time it came back, by this time I did not trust the medical profession. By the third time it came back, I had two tumors. One got to the size of a small tangerine, the other got to the size of a grapefruit. They were bleeding because cancer bleeds, and most people don't see their tumors. I got to see mine. Cancer bleeds, and I was bleeding a lot, and I was still working. So I was still,
Wow.
yes, I was still getting up every day, going to work, and hiding all of this. I ran a tech support organization, and my agents used to see me run through the call center with cloths and paper towels when they start bleeding. And what happens with cancer is cancer kills your blood vessels, and that's why your tumors bleed internally, and that's when people really get in trouble. So so the day that I ended up in ICU on a ventilator, I had gotten up to go to work.
Wow.
Yeah. I was crazy in fear. I was a single mom. I had a home to pay for. I had children underneath that I had needed to support. I just that's how I grew up, not letting people in and stuffing all my feelings. And I'm not faulting my parents. That was their generation. They grew up in the Depression. They served in World War II, both of my parents. That's just what we did. We stuffed everything and we were strong, right? So that's what I did. And the morning I was depressed, I was suicidal. I got up to go to work. I touched one of the tumors and it started bleeding. And I couldn't get it to stop. This time I couldn't get it to stop. I woke my daughter up and I said, "You need to get me the emergency room." And so she drove me to the emergency room, and the emergency room doctor could not get the bleeding to stop. He luckily had a oncologist that he knew from Sloan Kettering that had just moved here, and she was coming down the hill from Genesee. I live in the Denver area, so she was coming down the hill from the mountains, and she came right into the emergency room. My three older kids were there. It would bleed unless we held a tremendous amount of pressure to it. She came in and she tried to stop the bleeding. They couldn't find any surgical tape in this hospital because that would have, but by this time there were so many different blood vessels that were bleeding out. So she at one point took all my kids out of the room and said, and they were crying, and she got into my face and she said, "I am afraid you're going to bleed out right this moment."
Oh my goodness.
And I could feel the blood running down my back as she was trying to suture, trying to control this. And I know now what happened, Mark, but all of a sudden, it was divine intervention came in, and I looked at her and I said, "No, I'm not." And she said, "Well, I don't know that." So she wrapped me up very tightly and took me to another hospital, a very fairly new hospital, who did an embolization technique where they go into the groin and they put subject matter into the blood vessels leading to the face. And so they had to put me out. They did this surgery, but she wrapped me up so tight, and I had to stay that way for a long time. And by the time I got into the ambulance driver was taking my blood pressure, and she said, and he's like, "Oh my gosh, whoa." And I'm like, "What?" And he said, "They didn't tell you?" And I said, "No." And he goes, "Your blood pressure," and I don't even remember, it was 200 over 180 or like some ungodly. Yes. He said,
Wow.
You almost stroked out." And so they took me to the hospital. I had the surgery. I woke up in ICU on a ventilator.
Wow.
Now, here I am, this controlling businesswoman running organizations, and I can't move. When you're on a ventilator, they tie your feet down, they tie your hands down. And when I woke up, I could hear people talking, and I didn't know where I was. I didn't know what was going on. So, and I, started trying to flail around, and they put some in my IV. And so that was the moment, one of the most defining moments of my entire life, to be
Wow.
to be this busy, successful woman outwardly waking up in ICU on a ventilator. So when they got me off the ventilator, which I just kept writing out, "Get me off this thing, get me off this thing." And so finally, and that became a really big problem too, because my airway was so narrow that they had a hard time getting it in, and they didn't want to take it out. They were afraid that my airway would collapse. The head doctor of ICU said, "I'm scared." And I said, "I'm not." I wrote down, "I am not," So anyway,
Yes.
the oncologist, right? The surgical oncologist who had saved my life walked in, and she said, "All right, so we're going to get you strong, but we got to do this quickly because this embolization surgery is not going to last forever. And what we're going to do is, when you're strong, so in about a week or two, we're going to go in, and it's going to be about a 15-hour surgery. And we're going to go in, and we're going to take your cheekbone, and we're going to take your jawbone, and we're going to go down into your throat. And you'll probably be on a feeding tube for the rest of your life. And then there'll be, and that, 15 hours surgery. And then there'll be, at least 5 to 7 more surgeries for reconstruction." And I'm like, "What?" And my kids were there, and then, I went to see her after I got ICU about a week after, and she said the same thing. And I was stunned. And I remember coming out of her office and looking at the foothills, and just saying, I don't know. I don't know what to do. God, what do I do? I don't know what to do. Because she put a lot of fear into me, and she made it very clear to me that if I didn't do this surgery, I was going to die. That the next time I wasn't going to be so lucky. Put a lot of fear into me. So for once in my life, I didn't let fear drive my decision. And that's what I say. That's another one of my tidbits. Don't ever let fear drive your decision, because you'll never make the right decision.
Let me pause you right there.
Sure.
And this is something that is totally pushed to the side and totally not addressed, in a cancer journey. But to me, one of the most important things is your mindset, and
Yes.
how powerful your mind really is. And I never realized how powerful our minds are until, you know, my back was against the wall, and I
Right.
was faced with my own mortality. And,
Yeah.
and so I learned by going through that how incredibly powerful and how important our mind is in our healing journey.
That,
And who talks about that? And
well, more now, but we are. We're talking about.
yes, absolutely. It is such an important piece, and we need to, bring that to light, because uh, that's not discussed,
No, I will say that it's the most important piece, because I know now that we cause disease and we can also cure disease. What is inside of us, along with our higher power, we are capable of healing our bodies, and it starts with our mindsets and our emotions. Our emotions get us where we are. Our emotions can get us out of where we are. And there's some miraculous stories out there, including mine, and lots of data now that is showing that if your mind, you can act, people walking in, like if you follow the work of Dr. Joe Dispenza, who became my guru when I came out of cancer. He's into meditation. I meditate every single day. The first thing I do when I wake up in the morning, so I get my mindset right, and I'm not living in, I don't start my morning with fear. But he's got data after data after, like, gathered it all up, and scientific proof that our emotions play a huge part in disease, and coming out of it too. So
I
yes,
completely agree. Absolutely.
that
And you're bringing up such valuable, important points about that. And our minds are just this incredible untapped resource.
yes,
And it's a resource that, everybody talks about. Oh, you get treatments and work with diet and everything like that. But nobody ever really talks about how important your mind is, and because we can let negative thoughts come in, and that's what manifests. But if
exactly.
we keep, you know instilling positive thoughts, hey, I'm going to live for my kids, I'm going to live to help other people in this journey. And that's been the most incredible thing for me. When I was going through, my worst, my mind was all that I had. And so that's what I used, because there was, my body was, it was darn near useless. I mean, it was, I was so weak, and so debilitated, that I came to realize that the only thing I had left was my mind. And so I figured, well, I better use it. I better maximize my mind in the experience through this journey. And it's, fortunately, and I'm so thankful and so blessed that that was, the way to go, because I've learned so much, connected with so many incredible people, and it's just changed my life. So, uh, yeah, I mean, it's just so powerful. And I thank you for just, having that spirit and that mindset, of just this incredible warrior. And
Thank
so, yeah, thanks for sharing that.
You're welcome. Well, one of the things, so I came out of ICU. I know I didn't have long. 6 weeks later, my tumors did start bleeding again. And at that point, I was doing a lot of supplementation. I was doing a lot around diet. I was trying my best to change up my mindset. I don't think I was as intuitive as you. And I love that you were that intuitive to understand how powerful your mind is. But I was working with an energy healer, and I had decided to go out to Chicago and meet with a very big cancer center out there with my daughter, and spent a week there. And I just didn't like I didn't want to be out there for treatments, and I just wasn't happy. And by this time I'd researched, I knew I needed radiation. I knew, but I wanted radiation with hypothermia, and I wanted oxygen therapy. And I'd researched all this, and I wanted the right radiation machines, because I knew in the hospitals, the majority of them were old and they were over radiating me. I knew that first time I got radiation. I quit. I didn't do the 37 when the cancer the second time. So I knew all these things. So I was on the plane coming back from Cancer Treatment Centers of America, not knowing what to do. And my energy healer called me as I got off the plane and said, I got the oncologist for you. They're in your own backyard. And I went to them right away. And the day I went in there, I wasn't supposed to go in, but my tumor started bleeding so bad. I called, and I was so, I'm fearful again, right? And the head oncologist, he got on the phone. He said, get in here now, right now. And so I got in there. It was around Christmas time, and he put together a plan. He was a radiation oncologist. He had pulled out of all the hospitals. He had his own surgical center. He had his own radiation centers. He was unbelievable. And he got me on the right, and he listened to me. He became my partner in me becoming cancer free. He and two other oncologists, they were my partners. I said, this is what I want to do. And they're like, okay. And I'd say, this is what I want to do. And they're like, okay. I want hypothermia. He did that. He did radiation. Was it tough? It was tough. I became very sick. I got depressed, and I isolated myself, Mark, the one thing you don't want to do is isolate yourself. The number one predictor of longevity is social integration. Number one predictor. And here I am isolating myself. So the only people I would allow around me, I've had a lot of shame. Like, how could I end up like this? The only people I would allowed around me were my children. Thank God for my kids. Because again, when there were days when I did, even going through radiation is hard. And I lost tons of weight. And so even on those days, on those dark days, I fought because of them. And so what I found out through this journey was, it all goes back to love, and it all goes back to self-love. So we're born with a ton of love. Like, we love ourselves. We love everything about ourselves, right? When we're babies. And for any parent, you're a parent, I'm a parent, and then that love is taken from us. That beautiful love that we all have is taken from us. And what I realized is I didn't have self-love, and I didn't have worthiness. That was taken from me when I was a child. I was sexually assaulted as a child. Later in life, when I was 24, I was sexually assaulted at gunpoint in my home.
Oh,
And I told both those times, if you tell anyone, I will kill you. And all my self-love was gone. So my journey led me to self-love. And we can't love anyone else until we love ourselves. We have nothing to give to anyone until we learn to love ourselves and to take care of ourselves. And it's not selfish. That's the number one thing I've learned. And And that's what I teach. And I teach connection. Like there's chronic diseases are way skyrocketing. Cancer killed worldwide 10 million people in 2020. It doesn't have to be that way.
No.
So the emotion,
Wow.
yeah. So, and that's what I get excited about is, how can I help people? Like, and people tell me their stories and their stories of, you know, sorry, somebody just, I,
Well, we're going to wait for her to come back. Uh, Terrilynn has such a fantastic story, and there's so much more to it. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask her to come back. Um, there you go.
I'm so sorry. I put my thing on the focus and a call came through. I apologize.
Oh, no problem. No problem at
Okay.
all.
I know you can have
In fact, what I'd like to do, because we have so much more to discuss. No, we do. That you have so much more to share with everybody. So I'd like to ask you to, if you wouldn't mind, to come back for us for part two, so we
I'd love
could
to.
talk about some more great stuff.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. I'd love to.
you'd love to? Oh, thank you
Oh,
so much.
yeah.
So why don't we do this? Why don't we why don't you give us your final thoughts and for this particular interview, and then we'll look forward to part two I mean, it's really going to be great. I can't wait because in fact, why don't you share right now as a final thought, you know about your experience with Kelly Turner, who
Oh,
wrote
okay. Yes.
the
So I
fantastic
will.
book Radical Remissions,
Yeah.
and kind of set the tone for part two.
Great. So if you haven't read the book, I know Mark, you have. It saved me in 2015. That's when it came out. It's Radical Remissions. It's Kelly Turner's, and she went around the world and interviewed 1,500 people, and they all had 9 things who made radical remissions when the medical community said you go home and die. And she put 9 of those things that they all did the same in the book, which I know you said you did all those. Didn't you? Haven't even read the book. And I did many of them before that, but the book really saved my life. So then in 2019, somebody approached me about becoming a radical remission. So she has monthly people that are radical remissions, and she does their story. So I was interviewed. We wrote the story, and I am the radical remission in November 2019. And my story was just about several things. First, I became my own advocate. It's so important to become the CEO of your life and your health. I researched everything, everything. I did my own research. I took control of my journey. I used other modalities so that were complementary and that helped with medical. So I'm not against medical. And people say that I am not. I use medical. So to be a radical remission means that you did use a lot of other modalities to become cancer free or become disease free, whatever disease it is. So I did take cannabis during that time. I researched the heck out of it, and I did take it, CBD. I don't anymore. I take CBD from hemp, but not anymore. I did energy work with an energy healer. Energy is powerful, and she brought out my own energy when my body wasn't strong enough to do it, on my own. I did meditation. I connected with my higher power. which became so a lot of spiritual. And I just believed, and I did lots of supplementation, but most of what I did was around my emotions, my feelings, my connecting with everyone I loved and others, and just finding the love within. And so, my story is on the website, Radical Remission, and I know you're going to link it, but it's a power. I mean, I love sharing my story. And then when people go out to the website and read my story, then they go and read a bunch of other stories, and you should do, because you would be a great story, Mark. So
Thank you.
yes, radical remission is a, and then I want to talk when we come back about Terry's flowers too. So I hope that we can.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
There's so much more we could talk about, and we need to share, to
I
the
love that.
world, because your story is fantastic and I love it.
Thank
So
you.
thank you so much,
Thank you.
Terrilynn. And I'm just gonna stick with Terrilynn. I love that.
All
I
right,
mean,
good. No, I like that you like that. I do too. It reminds me of my dad, so that's very special.
awesome, awesome.
Yeah,
And so I just want to thank you for your time and for
thank you.
sharing your incredible story. And look out for part 2. So what I'd like to do is I like to share a quote or two with people. And so this one is from Roy T. Bennett, The Light of the Heart. And he says, always find opportunities to make someone smile and to offer random acts of kindness in
Oh,
everyday life. And so
I
I
love
know
that.
that's what you do with your flowers, which we'll talk about next time. But
Yes,
it this world, it is just crumbling before our eyes. And the only way it's going to get better is if we help to make it better. And if
exactly.
we do, you know, what we can in our own way, to help bring happiness to someone else,
Yes,
and to make them smile, because that's the only way we can come together and help make this world better. And I was so excited and so happy to see what happened with Damar Hamlin, the
I mean,
Buffalo Bills player
yep.
who collapsed on the field during a Monday night football game. And guess what? People prayed for him.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, you know, he wakes up and is engaging with people, and so far the results are really, really good. So that, and what was amazing was the ESPN announcer who actually prayed for him on live TV. So that was just
I love
so
that.
great to see. Absolutely so great. So I'd like to thank everyone for joining us here at To Be Your Own Hero. Make the most out of every single day, because your health is everything. We both know that. I mean, without your health, with your health, you can fight another day. You can do what you need to do, and help other people. And so that's, make the most out of every single day, every single hour, every single minute, and every single breath. Thank you once again for joining me here, us here at To Be Your Own Hero. Have a great week, and we will see you next week with another video. Take
Thank you,
care.
Mark.